Finally, that incompetent guy is leaving.
Mitchell, who has taken over as acting president, sneered at me. The surrounding employees also looked down on me and smirked. If I leave, all of the president's favorites will be fired. Mitchell's sister, Arissa, who is the executive director, bit her lip in frustration.
What are you thinking? If Nick leaves, the company will really fall apart.
Shut up. I'm the acting president, and you're just the executive director. If you can't listen to me, then you should quit too.
Julia, the president's wife, is completely on Mitchell's side. If I quit, Mitchell's takeover of the company will succeed, but I don't have the power to stop it. It's painful to watch the infighting within this family-run business. I might as well just quit. Thank you for everything up until now. I thanked them and was about to take my leave. When I looked up, Mitchell, Julia, and the surrounding employees' faces have gone pale. I turned around and to my astonishment, my name is Nick Morgan. I'm a 32-year-old salesman in the sales department of a mid-sized design company, Johnson Design. Our company is family-run, and the higher ups all share the surname Johnson. The president is Richard Johnson. The senior managing director is his son, Mitchell Johnson, and the executive director is his daughter, Arissa Johnson. The president's wife, Julia Johnson, doesn't hold any official position, but often comes to the office to complain to the employees. I often hear that family-run businesses tend to be sweatshops. Sure, Julia, who just roams around the office without doing any work, can be annoying at times. But for now, I think it's a pretty good place to work if you can ignore Julia's complaints. The main reason is that Richard, the president, is a very respectable person. He never throws his weight around just because he's the president and always takes the employees' opinions into consideration. That's why our company has a good atmosphere. Employees don't bottle up their frustrations and work comfortably. Richard's children took up their positions about 5 years ago. Arissa, the eldest daughter, is 1 year older than the eldest son, Mitchell, but in terms of rank, Arissa is the executive director while Mitchell is the senior managing director. Despite this, Arissa doesn't complain about it. Arissa graduated from a well-known university in the capital region and is extremely competent, but she doesn't flaunt it. She's the type who prioritizes the ease of working for employees, and with a female boss like that, you feel inclined to follow her. On the other hand, Mitchell, who was appointed senior managing director, has a few issues. After graduating from college, before joining his father's company, Arissa gained experience at another design firm, but Mitchell spent his time backpacking around the world. It's not that traveling the world is a bad thing. It's just that he still has a student mindset and doesn't want to hear anything unpleasant. The fact that a younger person like Mitchell is made senior managing director might indicate that our company still has a male-dominated culture. However, Julia's influence is significant when it comes to Mitchell's preferential treatment. Julia dotes on Mitchell and seems to indulge his every whim. Still, being the son of a man of character like Richard, he'll probably change as he gains more experience. I used to think I was young, but it's been 10 years since I graduated from college. During that time, I've been working solely for Johnson Design. New, younger people keep joining, and I realize that I'm getting older too. I try to be mindful every day to avoid becoming a bad boss. Additionally, I have another connection with Richard. Richard enjoys playing chess, but he doesn't have many people to play with. There are folks who play Trump or Othello, but I'm the only one who plays chess. So, it's not uncommon for us to have matches in his office during lunch breaks or after work. We don't go easy on each other, and our win-loss record is about even.
Well, I lost today. I guess I'm getting old.
What are you talking about, Richard? We still need you to keep going strong. Richard, who recently turned 60, has been more conscious of his age lately. From my perspective, he's still very young and vigorous, a model for 60-year-old professionals. It seems that his concern about aging is partly because he feels Mitchell is still not competent enough to be trusted fully with the company.
I hate to leave it at a loss. How about another match, Nick?
Sure, I won't go easy on you. Richard laughed heartily, and we started setting up the chess pieces again. Then, one day, a female employee rushed out of the president's office.
Someone call an ambulance. The president said he's having chest pains and collapse.
When we headed to the president's office, the door was open and several employees had already crowded inside. Mitchell and Arissa were shouting loudly.
Dad, hang in there. I'm loosening your tie now.
Dad, you'll be okay. Just don't move. The ambulance is on its way.
The paramedics arrived quickly and took Richard away on a stretcher. Mitchell and Arissa accompanied him. Julia, who was at home, was informed and headed straight to the hospital. We couldn't focus on work and waited anxiously for news from Mitchell and Arissa. Soon, Arissa called the office.
Dad is completely unconscious. They say it's arrhythmia and a high fever, and he's in critical condition.
From that day, a sense of unease spread throughout the company. Everyone tried to keep working, but there was constant gossip about the future of Johnson Design.
If the president doesn't make it, will we all lose our jobs?
No, we have the senior managing director and the executive director. One of them will take over.
That one of them is a major issue. I think things would go well if Arissa became the president, but if Mitchell took over, I could only see a bleak future. The Johnson family had several family meetings. As a result, my worst fear came true, and it was decided that Mitchell, as the eldest son, would serve as acting president. This is one of the downsides of family-run businesses. However, it's not like the acting president could be decided by an employee vote. The next day, Mitchell confidently arrived at the company as the acting president. During the morning assembly, Arissa informed all the employees.
The president still hasn't regained consciousness. Johnson Design is facing the biggest crisis since its founding. Let's support the acting president and overcome this crisis together.
I listened to Arissa's words, lost in thought. I wondered if Arissa was really okay with this, if she was truly satisfied.
Acting president, please say a few words.
Oh, I know everyone is anxious during times like these, but I want you to trust me and do your best. If we keep doing our best, I'm sure my father's condition will improve.
One of Mitchell's cronies started clapping. Following suit, the other employees began to clap as well. I joined in, all the while staring intently at Arissa. Arissa, with a cold smile as if trying to hide her true feelings, joined in the applause. An employee standing right next to me muttered softly,
I wonder what will happen from now on. I'm very worried.
It seemed I wasn't the only one feeling anxious. A few days had passed since Mitchell became the acting president, and the effects were immediate. Shockingly, Mitchell started implementing large-scale layoffs. It's been 5 years since Mitchell joined Johnson Design, but quite a few employees have been dissatisfied with him. Unfortunately, I'm one of them. It seems he wants to get rid of anyone who doesn't agree with him. Let me explain how things have progressed so far. Before the layoffs began, Julia was constantly in the president's office. I don't know what they were talking about, but it didn't seem to be anything good for us employees.
Hey, someone take some tea to the president's office and see what's going on.
A female employee made some tea and knocked on the door of the president's office. We held our breath, listening for any sounds. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear much of the conversation. We waited for the female employee to come back. Soon, she came running back.
It looks like they're going through with the layoffs. They don't want any employees who don't align with the acting president's vision.
That means anyone who opposed the acting president in the past is definitely on the list.
What are we going to do? I've spoken up quite a bit.
If that's the case, I'm in the same boat. Since Mitchell and Arissa joined the company, employees have been clearly divided into two factions, the senior managing director's side and the executive director's side. I'm completely against Mitchell, meaning I'm on Arissa's side. Then, two of Mitchell's entourage, who had been in the president's office, walked in, and we all fell silent.
What's with the funeral-like atmosphere? From now on, we have to support Johnson Design under the acting president.
Well, we don't know how many of you will still be here. You'd better prepare yourselves.
The two henchmen looked at each other and laughed loudly. At least their futures seemed secure. The next day, one by one, people started getting fired. First, it was the employees who openly opposed Mitchell's methods. Next, it was the employees who, even though they never voiced opposition, sided with Arissa whenever something came up. Arissa was becoming more and more isolated. It seemed Mitchell wanted to drive Arissa out of Johnson Design. Why can't a brother and sister, only 1 year apart and sharing the same parents, get along? In the end, I was the only one left on Arissa's side. Arissa bit her lip in frustration.
My mother only cares about Mitchell. I've always been rebellious towards her, so she doesn't find me lovable.
Arissa, is Mitchell visiting Richard in the hospital regularly? Arissa shook her head weakly.
He's leaving it all to the hospital. He thinks there's no hope for recovery. Mitchell is planning to take over Johnson Design.
Are you visiting Richard? How is his condition?
Actually, there have been some significant changes, positive changes, but Mitchell is moving so fast that I don't know if it will be in time.
If it might be in time, there might be hope for his recovery. For the first time, I felt a glimmer of light in the darkness. Arissa, please take me with you the next time you visit Richard. I may not be able to do much, but I want to help in any way I can.
Thank you. I haven't visited him in the past few days. Let's go as soon as we finish work today.
Just then, one of Mitchell's cronies approached me and instructed me to go to the president's office. Arissa's face tensed up. It seems my time has finally come. I looked at Arissa intently. It's time. I feel bad leaving you, but I'll go face my judgment.
I'm going too. I can't allow such outrageous behavior.
We both entered the president's office. Mitchell was sitting in a high-back luxury chair with one of his cronies standing to his right and Julia smiling happily next to him. The crony who led me there quickly positioned himself to Mitchell's left.
Nick, you're fired as of today, but you've served the company for 10 years. In recognition of that, we'll consider it early retirement. You'll get a decent severance package, so don't worry.
There's no point in struggling here. I understand. I nodded quietly. Mitchell sneered at me with satisfaction.
Finally, the incompetent one is leaving.
The cronies also looked down on me and smirked. Arissa bit her lip in frustration, but quickly retorted.
What are you thinking? If Nick leaves, the company will really fall apart.
Shut up. I'm the acting president, and you're the executive director. If you can't listen to me, you can leave too.
Then Julia, standing beside him, spoke up.
Without arms and legs, there's nothing you can do anyway. You're competent enough. You'll find a job at another company.
Mom, are you saying I'm unnecessary here?
Oh, you're just realizing that now? This company will be inherited solely by Mitchell. Don't worry, we'll replace the employees we've lost.
Are these the words a mother should say to her own daughter? If I leave, Mitchell's takeover of the company will be complete, but I never had the power to stop it in the first place. It's painful to watch the infighting within this family-run business. I felt sorry for Arissa, but I was exhausted. I might as well quit. Acting President, Executive Director, Mrs. Johnson, thank you for everything. I said my parting words and was about to leave. When I looked up, Mitchell, Julia, and the cronies' faces have turned pale. When I turned around, I was astonished. There was Richard, the president, in a wheelchair. The person pushing the wheelchair, though in plain clothes, looked like a nurse.
The doctor gave me permission to be outside for just 1 hour.
Richard was a bit thinner, but his eyes were sharp and he radiated energy. Julia stumbled toward Richard.
Richard, when did you recover enough to be in a wheelchair?
You and Mitchell never came to visit, so you wouldn't know, but I've been getting better each day.
I see. That's good to hear. I've been so worried.
Richard snorted and turned away from Julia, looking instead at Mitchell.
You've been doing whatever you please while I was gone. Remember, you're just the acting president, not the president.
At first, Mitchell couldn't comprehend the situation, but hearing Richard's strong voice made him tremble.
I just thought of the company. I thought you weren't going to make it.
You underestimated me. I won't be taken down by something like this. My pulse is steady and my fever has dropped.
That's good to hear. I was really worried.
Richard glared at Mitchell.
Don't say things you don't mean, but fine, I'm sure it was all your mother's idea.
That's a misunderstanding, Richard. I would never put ideas in Mitchell's head.
We've known each other for a long time, I can tell. Anyway, Arissa, I'm feeling a bit tired. Could you call a medical taxi? I need to go back to the hospital.
Of course, Dad. You can give instructions from your hospital room. I'll be your hands and feet.
Thanks to this huge commotion, my early retirement was off the table. Richard's recovery was remarkable. He dedicated himself to rehab to rebuild the muscles that had weakened during his hospitalization. Gradually, he started to walk on his own. I started visiting his hospital room every day with Arissa, and he seemed healthier each time I saw him. However, it looks like it will take a bit more time for a full recovery. So Arissa brought a computer to the hospital room to make it easier for Richard to work. With Arissa and my support, Richard could manage his presidential duties through telework from the hospital. Though he's 60, Richard has always been comfortable using a computer, so he was happy to work from his hospital room. He opened the laptop and turned it on.
All right, what should we start with?
First, let's get Johnson Design back to its original state.
Displayed on the computer screen was a list of the employees who had been fired.
It might be too much to ask them to come back after being let go, but we can't function without them. I'm prepared to personally apologize to each one.
Yes, and I'll apologize with you. If I hadn't collapsed, this wouldn't have happened.
Following Richard's instructions, the fired employees were brought back. We all joyfully reunited.
I'm so relieved to be reinstated. I was worried because I still have a significant mortgage on my house.
That's great. Let's continue to support the president. With this, about 90% of the original staff were back. Unfortunately, it wasn't 100%. So we'd need to hire new employees to fill the gaps. With some fresh faces, the company should grow even more. Eventually, Richard was discharged from the hospital and started coming to work in a wheelchair.
Getting sick is no joke. If I had let my guard down, my son would take over the company.
That's right, Dad. We need you to stay strong.
Richard and Arissa have a really good relationship and trust each other deeply. The Johnson family had sadly split into two factions, Richard and Arissa on one side, Julia and Mitchell on the other. Julia must have loved Richard when they got married. Maybe romantic love doesn't last forever. Not being married myself, I don't have any right to say. Now that most employees have returned, it's time to deal with those who betrayed Richard. First, the two cronies of Mitchell were both fired.
Those two made Mitchell overestimate himself. Well, the real culprit is Julia.
As time went by, the couple grew more discontent with each other. At some point, Julia began to dote on Mitchell exclusively. Even though Richard was concerned about Mitchell's irresponsibility, he appointed him senior managing director above Arissa, who was a year older. This was Richard's way of showing affection, but it didn't reach Mitchell. The other employees who sided with Mitchell received strict warnings. Employees are in a weak position, so when leadership changes, they have no choice but to adapt. It was a tough decision for them too. Richard understood this well, so he didn't reduce anyone's salary or fire them. The main culprits this time were, without a doubt, Mitchell and Julia. Even though Mitchell was his son and Julia was his wife, Richard had to ensure they received appropriate punishment. First, Mitchell was demoted to a regular employee for recklessly playing with employees' fates while Richard was away. This demotion really hit Mitchell hard. Having been entrusted with the role of senior managing director from the start, and even using the president's office in his father's absence, this was intolerable for him. Mitchell was so ashamed of being demoted that he stopped coming to work regularly. This was convenient for those of us in managerial positions, as it avoided the confusion of how to deal with him. However, his prolonged absence made me curious, so I asked Arissa about the situation at home. Although Arissa lives alone, Mitchell still lives with their parents.
So I haven't seen it firsthand, but I've heard he's holed up in his room and the housekeeper leaves his meals in the hallway outside his door. It's pathetic.
Maybe he's just lost all his confidence at once. However, Julia, who dotes on Mitchell, blamed Richard's illness for the recent coup-like turmoil. The relationship between Richard and Julia had deteriorated beyond repair. Both Richard and Julia deeply cared for their children and forced themselves to live together to avoid causing them pain. As a form of punishment, Richard banned Julia from coming to the office. When Julia complained, Richard showed her the photos and documents he had obtained from the detective agency.
You've been cheating on me all along. Did you think I didn't know?
Julia had been frequenting Johnson Design because her lover was there. Her lover was a young employee in his 30s, and Julia had been showering him with money. Since Mitchell became the acting president, there were even talks of promoting this man to a special position as a manager.
I stayed with you out of loyalty for all these years. But after this, that's gone. The money you spent on him was money I earned.
Julia desperately tried to make excuses, but Richard wouldn't listen. As the president's wife, trying to privatize the company was a serious offense. Richard and Julia were going to get a divorce after many years of marriage. However, Julia's lover quickly submitted his resignation and returned to his hometown. Mitchell, who sided with Julia, was strongly opposed to the divorce.
Mom doesn't deserve this. How is she supposed to live now that you're divorcing her?
She'll have to work or find another way. It's normal to work to support yourself. Why don't you try working too?
Richard finally fired Mitchell, who refused to work. Thus, Mitchell and Julia were kicked out of the house. Normally, a young, able-bodied son like Mitchell would work to support his mother. But Mitchell refused to work for anyone else. His pride wouldn't allow it after being pampered as the senior managing director and acting president. As a result, their money ran out. With nowhere else to go, Julia and Mitchell had to return to Julia's hometown. But by then, the family home was occupied by Julia's brother and his wife. Knowing Julia and Mitchell's plight, her brother and his wife couldn't turn them away. They were given a small room and lived with a sense of shame. Meanwhile, what happened to those of us who stayed at Johnson Design? Richard fully recovered and no longer needed a wheelchair. He still uses a cane for safety, but he walks confidently on his own. With Richard's full return, the company also returned to normal. In the next round of promotions, I became the head of sales. My responsibility has increased, but Richard, the president, trusts me. My subordinates also trust and follow me, so I feel motivated every day. Arissa became the senior managing director and a great advisor to Richard.
I should have made Arissa the senior managing director from the start. Then this coup-like incident wouldn't have happened.
I understand why you wanted to give Mitchell a chance. It's good we found out early that he didn't have the capability.
They say the least capable child is often the most loved, and Mitchell was exactly that. Richard deeply regretted appointing Mitchell, who lacked the ability, as the senior managing director out of fatherly affection. Thus, Johnson Design was able to recover from a major crisis. Our performance improved and employees' wages increased. We, the employees, are now more motivated than ever to support the company under Richard's leadership. Even during lunch breaks, I would play chess with Richard in his office. Just like before the hospitalization incident, our skills are evenly matched, and we take turns winning and losing. Richard seems to enjoy this.
Getting an easy win in a game feels like patronizing golf, which doesn't feel good.
I understand that very well. Richard stayed silent for a while. I thought he was thinking about the chess pieces, but he said something unexpected.
Nick, aren't you thinking about getting married? You're not getting any younger.
It's a bit embarrassing, but I've been enjoying work so much that I don't even have a girlfriend. But you're right, I should start thinking about my future.
I may not be the best person to say this, given my marriage didn't go well, but maybe it's time to consider marriage?
Maybe I should join a group date or something. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and Arissa walked in.
Oh, playing chess again? You two are as close as ever.
Nick is the only one who plays with me.
Arissa casually sat down next to me and watched our game with interest.
Nick, can you teach me how to play chess? I'd like to study and try to beat my father.
That sounds great. Richard might get bored just playing with me all the time. Richard looked back and forth between Arissa and me, grinning.
How about the three of us go out for dinner tonight?
That sounds nice. Nick, are you free?
I'd love to join you. Lately, we've been spending more time together like this. It's the most comfortable and pleasant relationship for me.
I was just telling Nick that maybe he should start thinking about marriage. Arissa, you too. Don't stay single forever. Let me see my grandchildren.
Well, I do feel a bit anxious about having kids, but I don't have anyone. Maybe I should go to a group date.
When Arissa said the same thing as me, I couldn't help but laugh. I was just saying the same thing. Arissa, shall we go to a group date together?
Sure, that sounds fun. Just make sure to bring some handsome guys.
Wouldn't it be faster if you two just got married?
Arissa and I looked at each other and laughed. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't aware of Arissa, but I felt I wasn't good enough to ask her out yet. When I glanced at Arissa, she blushed shyly. Maybe I should ask her out for a drink next time, I thought